The galaxy was vast, filled with stars, civilizations, and wonders beyond imagination. Yet, even in such greatness, fear and despair could take root like poison. On the edge of Council space, far away from the rich and powerful core worlds, lay the peaceful colony world of Serath. It was a jewel among planets. Its oceans glittered like liquid gold under the twin suns, and its valleys were covered in endless green, alive with life and song. For many years, Serath had lived in peace under the protection of the Galactic Council, a union of dozens of species that promised safety to all who swore loyalty. The Council spoke of unity, strength, and justice. To the people of Serath, those words had always felt comforting, like a shield no enemy could break. But shields sometimes crack, and promises can be broken. On one cold evening, as Serath's sun sank behind the horizon and the sky glowed with shades of crimson, a whisper of terror came across the stars. The Dominion had arrived. The Dominion was not a people. It was a plague of warlords and machine legions, a tide of destruction that swept through worlds without mercy. Wherever they came, fire followed. Cities crumbled. Families vanished. Only silence remained. The Council had fought them before, but always with hesitation, always with fear. And now, when Serath called for help, the Council's great fleets did not come. The Serathians had prayed for days. They had sent messages to the Council chambers, pleading for protection. But no answers came, only silence. In the capital city, people gathered in the central plaza. The grand white stones of the plaza, once a place of festivals and laughter, were now filled with frightened faces. Mothers clutched their children tightly. Elders bowed their heads in prayer. Soldiers in cracked armor stood at the edges, gripping their weapons with trembling hands. One young boy, no older than 10, sat on the steps with his mother. His wide eyes looked at the sky as he asked, "Will someone come? Will they save us?" The soldier standing guard nearby could not answer. His throat tightened. He wanted to tell the boy that help was on the way, that brave fleets would soon arrive, that they were not alone. But he could not lie. He looked at the empty heavens, dark and silent, and lowered his head. In the distance, alarms wailed. The Dominion had entered orbit. Their ships blotted out the stars, huge black silhouettes that glowed with weapons ready to strike. The ground trembled as the first bombardments began. Buildings shook, windows shattered, fires spread like hungry beasts. Fear turned into despair. An elder priest stepped forward, his voice breaking as he tried to calm the people. "Do not give in to fear," he said. "Even in the darkest night, light may yet return." But his words were drowned by the screams of ships falling from the skies. The Dominion warlord's voice thundered across open channels, carried into every ear on Serath. "No one will come for you. The Council is weak. The galaxy belongs to us. Your world will be taken. Your people will serve. Resistance is nothing." The message cut deeper than any blade. Hope itself seemed to shatter. The boy clung to his mother, hiding his face. She held him close, tears in her eyes. Around them, the soldiers of Serath stood ready to fight, though they knew it would be in vain. They were farmers, miners, and builders, not warriors. Their weapons were old, their shields weak. But still they would stand, because they had no choice. Above, the night sky burned red. The Council had abandoned them. Serath was alone. And yet, somewhere far across the stars, their cry had already been heard, but no one on Serath knew that. Not yet. They believed this was their end. The night on Serath was no longer peaceful. It was a night of fire and thunder. The Dominion fleet had descended like a storm of darkness, their ships blotting out the stars. They were machines of war, fast and merciless, built not to inspire wonder but to spread fear. From the skies, beams of red light struck the ground, tearing apart roads and homes. Towers that once reached proudly toward the suns crumbled in seconds. Smoke spread across the valleys, covering the capital in a choking haze. The people screamed. Families ran through the streets searching for safety, but there was none. The Dominion did not come to conquer. They came to erase. At the heart of the city, Commander Rin, leader of Sarath's small defense force, stood with his soldiers. His armor was cracked, his blade dull, but his spirit still burned. He shouted, "Over the chaos. Hold the lines, do not break, this is our home." But his soldiers knew the truth. Their weapons were outdated. Their shields could barely withstand a single strike from the enemy. The Dominion war machines, towering beasts of steel with glowing eyes, landed with thunderous steps. Their claws tore through walls. Their cannons spat fire. Against them, the Sarathians looked like children holding sticks. Still they fought. Not because they believed they could win, but because surrender was worse. An old priest, watching from the steps of the plaza, whispered with trembling lips, "They will take everything. Our homes, our children, our very souls." And so it began. The machines seized the wounded, dragging them into cages. They tore families apart. Children screamed as they were pulled from their mothers' arms. The air was filled with the sound of breaking stone and breaking hearts. In the command chamber aboard the Dominion flagship, the warlord leaned forward on his throne of iron. His body was part flesh, part machine, a fusion of cruelty and technology. His voice was like thunder as he spoke over the open channel, letting every soul on Sarath hear him. "No one will come for you," he said, his words echoing across the city. "The council is weak. They hide behind walls and treaties. They do not care for you. You are nothing but dust in the wind. You are alone." The words pierced deeper than any weapon. Mothers wept openly. Fathers lowered their heads. Even the soldiers who still stood felt their strength fade. What was the point of fighting if even their protectors, the mighty council fleets, had abandoned them? A young boy, the same child who had once asked if someone would come, pressed his face into his mother's chest. "He's right," the boy whispered. "No one is coming." His mother kissed the top of his head, tears running down her cheeks. She wanted to tell him otherwise. She wanted to lie, if only to give him comfort. But her lips could not form the words. The silence of the sky had already answered. Commander Rin fought like a lion, his sword glowing with desperate strikes. He cut down one machine, then another, but for every enemy that fell, 10 more rose from the smoke. His soldiers cried out as they were torn apart. His heart broke, but still he stood tall. "If this is the end," he shouted, "then we will face it standing, not kneeling." But the Dominion warlord laughed. His voice was filled with scorn. "You resist like insects against fire. Brave, but useless." Another wave of destruction fell from the skies, turning half the city into rubble. The night glowed as bright as day, but it was not the light of hope. It was the light of ruin. In that moment, the people of Sarath truly believed they had been abandoned. The council had failed them. The galaxy had forgotten them. And as the Dominion tightened its grip, Sarath sank deeper into despair. Yet far away, beyond the borders of the council, beyond the places the Dominion thought to watch, a faint signal traveled through the void. A cry for help, a cry that had reached Earth. But for the people of Sarath, the night was long, too long, and they could not yet imagine what answer awaited them in the stars. Far across the galaxy, beyond the Dominion's shadow, and far from the Council's reach, the signal of Sarath traveled through the void. It was weak, broken, almost lost in the endless silence of space. But somehow, it reached a place no one expected. It reached Earth. Earth was not a name the Council spoke with. Respect. To them, humans were newcomers, a young species born from a small blue planet. They had been allowed to join the Council in name, but never in trust. Humans were seen as reckless, too violent, too unpredictable. The Council treated them as children who played with fire. And yet, humanity had not wasted their years in silence. Rejected by others, Earth had turned inward. They built, they studied, they forged fleets in their own star system, not for glory, but for survival. They remembered their own history, wars, disasters, struggles, and knew that no one else would protect them if the galaxy turned cold. When Sarath's cry for help reached Earth, it echoed through the halls of the United Terran Command. Inside, a vast chamber filled with holographic stars, Admiral Elias Reyes stood tall. He was a man carved from years of service, his hair touched with gray, his eyes sharp as steel. Around him, officers and commanders sat in silence as the broken voice of Sarath's leader played again. Please, this is Sarath. Dominion forces have breached our defenses. The Council will not answer. Someone, anyone, please. The transmission ended with static. The room stayed quiet for a long time. One young officer whispered, Admiral, they're not even part of our protectorate. Should we really? Reyes turned slowly, his gaze heavy but calm. Do you hear what you just said? Should we help? That is not who we are. That is not what humanity has ever been. If we ignore them, then we are no better than the Council that abandoned them. Another officer frowned. But the Dominion fleet is massive. They've crushed entire star systems. If we go, we risk everything. Reyes's voice hardened. We risk everything every day. The question is not if we can win. The question is, what kind of people do we choose to be? The words struck like lightning. Silence filled the chamber again, but this time it was different. Not hesitation, but thought. Reflection. At last, a veteran commander stood and saluted. Then I say we fight. One by one, others followed. Their voices rose, steady and firm. We fight. Admiral Reyes nodded once, his jaw set. Then, prepare the fleet. And so the decision was made. Far beneath the oceans of Earth, in hidden shipyards carved into mountains and orbiting stations above the blue planet, the might of humanity began to stir. Colossal warships powered up, their engines glowing with fire. Sleek fighters rolled from hangars, their wings shining in the sun. Thousands of soldiers prepared for war, not with fear, but with determination. For years, humanity had been ignored. For years, their fleets had been underestimated. Now, for the first time, the galaxy would see them rise. As the armada gathered, Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Resolve. The ship was a beast of steel, larger than any single Council cruiser, armed with weapons that had never been revealed to outsiders. Around it, hundreds of ships moved into formation, a swarm of light against the dark. Reyes looked at the stars ahead, where Sarath waited in despair. He spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. You are not alone. Not while Earth still breathes. The engines roared. The fleet leapt into the void. Across the galaxy, the people of Sarath huddled in ruins, believing no one would come. But hope had already left Earth, carried on wings of fire. The humans were coming. The last shields had collapsed hours ago. The defense towers stood as burned skeletons, their weapons silenced forever. The capital, once bright and proud, was nothing but rubble and smoke. The Dominion machines walked the streets like giants, crushing stone and hope beneath their iron. Fleet Commander Rin and his remaining soldiers had pulled back to the plaza. It was the heart of the city, now turned into a battlefield of desperation. He stood among the ruins, his armor broken, blood running from a cut on his brow. His sword was heavy, but his spirit would not let him drop it. Stand with me, he shouted to the handful of soldiers still alive. If we fall together. They roared back, but it was not the sound of victory. It was the sound of people who knew their end had come. Families huddled in the plaza, clutching one another as the Dominion closed in. Mothers pressed their children against their chests. Fathers tried to shield them with their own bodies. Above them, the sky burned red with fire raining from the heavens. The young boy, the same child who had once asked if someone would come, sat in his mother's arms. His small hands trembled as he whispered, "It hurts, Mother. I don't want to die." His mother kissed his hair, tears falling on his cheeks. "Close your eyes, my love," she whispered. "If this is the end, you will not face it alone." Obey. Dominion warlord's voice thundered again, broadcast across every channel. His laughter echoed like poison. "No one comes for you," he mocked. "The council hides. The galaxy bows to us. Your world dies tonight." His words cut deeper than weapons. People lowered their heads. Even the strongest among them felt the last pieces of hope slipping away. And then, everything changed. It began as a whisper in the sky. A shimmer, faint at first, almost invisible. A star that moved where no star should. Then another, and another. The people lifted their eyes, confused, afraid to believe. Commander Rin's heart skipped a beat. His eyes widened as hundreds, no, thousands, of lights appeared above the burning clouds. They were not stars, they were ships. Vast ships bristling with weapons, their engines blazing like suns. A voice broke through the Dominion's broadcast, strong and unshaken. "This is Admiral Elias Reyes of the Earth Defense Armada," it said. "To the people of Serath, hold on, you are not alone." The plaza went silent. Mothers stopped crying. Soldiers froze with disbelief. Even the boy lifted his head, his eyes wide. "They came," his mother whispered, her voice breaking. "The humans came." The Dominion fleet shifted at once, their formations turning to face the newcomers. The warlord roared in anger. "Humans? Outcasts? You dare to interfere?" But Admiral Reyes's voice cut through him, sharp as steel. "We dare." The sky exploded. Earth's fleet surged forward in perfect formation. Fighters streaked ahead like arrows of light, weaving between enemy fire. Cruisers unleashed storms of missiles that lit the heavens. Battleships fired beams that cut through the dark like burning spears. The Dominion, shocked but furious, fought back with everything they had. The sky became a sea of fire, brighter than day, filled with explosions and streaks of light. On the ground, the people of Serath cried out, not in despair this time, but in hope. They watched the heavens burn, and for the first time in days, they believed they might survive. The boy clutched his mother's hand, his eyes shining. "Mother," he whispered, "they came for us." Commander Rin, still gripping his broken sword, dropped to one knee. His tears mixed with the blood on his face as he whispered, "By the stars, humanity came." The long night was not over. The battle had only just begun. But for the first time, Serath was no longer alone. The heavens above Serath became a sea of fire. Earth's armada struck with fury. Hundreds of human ships surged forward, their engines burning bright, their formations sharp and disciplined. Fighters darted like sparks, weaving through enemy fire, while cruisers and battleships unleashed torrents of missiles and energy beams that split the darkness. The Dominion had expected no resistance. Now they faced a storm unlike anything they had seen before. The warlord aboard the Dominion flagship roared with rage. His face twisted into a snarl as he slammed his clawed fist against the armrest of his iron throne. "Humans? Insolent vermin? You dare stand against the Dominion?" On the bridge of the Eternal Resolve, Admiral Reyes stood firm, his hands behind his back. His calm voice cut through the noise of battle. "We dare, and we do not kneel. Target their flanks. Break their lines." The order carried like lightning. Human ships split their formation, striking from angles the Dominion could not defend. Explosions ripped through the enemy fleet as Dominion cruisers fell one after another. On the surface of Serath, the people lifted their eyes. Where once the sky had been filled only with fire and ruin, now it blazed with hope. Every explosion above meant another Dominion ship destroyed, another chance for survival. Commander Rin stood in the plaza, staring upward in awe. "They fight. They fight for us," he whispered. His soldiers, battered and bloodied, shouted with renewed strength, "For Serath, for the humans." But the Dominion was not so easily defeated. The enemy fleet reorganized, their formations tightening, their weapons spitting streams of red fire. Their war machines were countless, and they swarmed like a tide of steel. Several human ships were struck, their hulls torn apart as fire spread through their decks. Soldiers aboard fought to the last breath, some staying behind in crippled ships, to buy time for their comrades. On the ground, the people watched in horror as a massive human cruiser exploded in the sky. A child cried out, "No, they're falling!" His father gripped his shoulder and whispered, "No, son, they are standing for us." Admiral Reyes did not flinch. His eyes never left the battlefield. "Hold the line," he said firmly. "Every ship, every life, every strike matters. We do not break." The Dominion warlord laughed through the open channel. "You fight well for children of a forgotten world, but you will fall as all others have fallen. You cannot stop us," Reyes answered without hesitation. "We don't need to stop you everywhere, we only need to stop you here. For Serath, for the innocent." His words carried to every human ship, to every soldier who gripped their weapons tighter, to every pilot who steered into the storm without fear. The battle grew fiercer. Fighters clashed in swarms, missiles streaked across the heavens, and beams of light carved the void. The soundless roar of destruction filled the skies, but beneath it, there was rhythm, a heartbeat of defiance. On the ground, the boy who had once lost hope now stared at the heavens, his small hands clenched into fists. "They came for us," he whispered again and again, as though reminding himself it was real. His mother held him close, her tears no longer of despair but of awe. One by one, Dominion ships began to falter. The humans pressed harder, their fleet fighting as though the fire of all their history burned inside them. Every loss only sharpened their will. Every fallen comrade became a reason to strike harder. At last, a massive Dominion destroyer broke apart in the sky, its wreckage burning as it fell into the sea below. The people of Serath cheered, their voices rising above the chaos. Hope was no longer a dream. It was alive, blazing across the heavens with every human strike. The war was far from over, but something had changed. The Dominion had met an enemy unlike any before. The humans had come, and they would not retreat. The skies above Serath burned brighter than day. Explosions filled the void, painting the heavens with fire. Earth's fleet and the Dominion's armada clashed in a storm of destruction, neither side willing to yield. Human ships fought with unshaken courage, but the Dominion had numbers. Waves of enemy cruisers swarmed, unleashing endless streams of red fire. Fighters dove through the chaos. Missiles streaked across the darkness, and hulks of broken ships drifted silently, grave markers of the fallen. On the Eternal Resolve, Admiral Reyes stood tall at the center of the bridge. The ship shook from another impact, alarms blaring, but he did not flinch. His eyes were locked on the battlefield. "Report," he said. "Sir," an officer replied, her voice shaking. "We've lost the valiant Dawn and the Iron Claw. Casualties in the thousands." A silence fell over the bridge for a moment. Then Reyes's voice, calm and steady, cut through it. "Their sacrifice holds the line. We honor them by pressing forward. Redirect the 7th Squadron to cover the flank. The Dominion must not break us." Across the fleet, captains repeated his words. "We do not break." On Serath's surface, the people watched in horror and awe. They saw human ships torn apart, burning as they fell through the skies. They saw Dominion war machines still pushing forward, endless and merciless. Yet the humans never retreated. Even when crippled, their ships fought until the very last spark. Commander Rin, his sword still in his hand, stared upward with clenched teeth. "They bleed for us," he whispered. "They die for us. We cannot waste their gift." He rallied his soldiers, and though their weapons were weak compared to the Dominion's machines, they surged forward, striking wherever they could, adding their voices to humanity's defiance. Above, Admiral Reyes opened a channel to all ships. His voice carried through every deck, every cockpit, every heart. "Men and women of Earth, hear me," he said. "We fight today not for conquest, not for power, but for something greater. We fight for those who believed no one would come. We fight so children may see the dawn. Every ship, every life here matters. Remember this. Humanity does not abandon the helpless. Not now. Not ever." A roar of voices answered across the fleet. Pilots gritted their teeth. Gunners pressed their fingers to triggers with fire in their eyes. Crews worked with broken systems, refusing to give in. The Dominion warlord sneered from his throne of iron. "Pathetic words. You bleed, you burn, yet you still fight. Why cling to hope when death is certain? Reyes's answer was quiet but strong. Because hope is the one weapon you cannot destroy. With renewed fury, Earth's fleet struck back. A group of human destroyers dove into the heart of the Dominion formation, their guns blazing. Even as enemy fire tore into their hulls, they did not turn away. They rammed enemy cruisers head-on, exploding in brilliant bursts that shattered the Dominion's ranks. The people of Sarath cried out, their voices shaking the plaza. For the first time in memory, they were not watching their own defenders die in despair. They were watching humans fight with fire that refused to die. The boy clutched his mother's hand as he pointed to the sky. Look, mother, they are still standing. Even when they fall, they stand. Tears ran down her face, but now they were not tears of fear. Yes, she whispered. They stand for us. The battle raged on. Fire and blood filled the heavens, but in the chaos, something undeniable was born. A belief that spread from one heart to another, across Sarath, and through every human ship. A single phrase, whispered first by a soldier, then shouted by many, began to echo everywhere. Below, humans came, and the Dominion for the first time felt doubt. The battle had raged through the long night, a storm of fire and steel across the skies of Sarath. Both fleets were battered. Both had lost countless lives. Yet one thing remained, clear. The humans had not broken. The Dominion warlord roared from his throne, his machine voice shaking with fury. His massive flagship, black as midnight, loomed above the battlefield. It was larger than any human ship, armed with weapons that could tear apart entire cities. His eyes glowed with rage as he gave the order. Crush them. Burn them until nothing remains. The Dominion fleet surged forward one last time, a wall of steel and fire. On the bridge of the Eternal Resolve, Admiral Reyes stood with his crew. His ship shook from repeated strikes, sparks showering the deck, but his voice was steady. This is it. The final strike. All ships, converge on the flagship. We end this now. The humans answered without hesitation. Fighters swarmed like arrows of light, diving through enemy defenses. Cruisers unleashed storms of missiles, tearing gaps in the Dominion formation. Battleships turned their cannons toward the massive flagship, firing beams that lit the heavens. But the warlords' ships struck back with terrifying power. Human vessels were torn apart, their crews lost in silence. The Dominion roared with cruel laughter as another human battleship was split in two. On the surface, the people of Sarath cried out in fear, watching the battle tilt toward ruin. The boy buried his face in his mother's arms. They can't win. The ship is too big. His mother shook her head, her voice trembling but firm. Believe, my son, they will not leave us. Admiral Reyes knew what had to be done. He turned to his officers. If the flagship falls, the rest will break. Focus everything on their core reactor. Even if we burn, we finish this. The crew looked at him with wide eyes. They knew what it meant, yet one by one they nodded. Then let's finish it, his first officer said. The Eternal Resolve charged. Engines roared as the flagship of Earth led the attack. Dominion ships tried to block the way, but human destroyers rammed them aside, sacrificing themselves to clear the path. Commander Rin and his soldiers on the ground shouted as they watched the charge. Go! Go, humans! Break them! The boy's voice joined theirs, his small fists clenched. Please win! Please! The final clash shook the heavens. Human ships surrounded the Dominion flagship, striking again and again. Explosions tore across its armored hull, but still it stood. The warlord sneered, his laughter echoing across the comms. You cannot kill me, he roared. I am eternal. But Admiral Reyes's voice cut through, calm and unyielding. Nothing built on fear lasts forever. The Eternal Resolve unleashed its final barrage. Every cannon, every missile, every beam fired in unison. The sky turned white with fire. The Dominion flagship shuddered, cracked, and then exploded in a storm of light. The warlord's voice ended in a scream that was swallowed by silence. All across the battlefield, the remaining Dominion ships faltered. Without their leader, without their monster to command them, they broke. Some tried to flee, others simply shut down. Humanity pressed forward, striking down the last resistance. At last, the skies grew quiet. The battle was over. On the surface, the people of Sarath looked upward at the wreckage burning in the atmosphere. For the first time in weeks, the night sky was clear. The boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Are we safe now?" She pulled him close, tears shining in her eyes. "Yes, my love, because someone came." In the plaza, Commander Rin fell to his knees. He lifted his sword high, not in defeat but in salute. "To humanity," he said softly. "They came when no one else would." Admiral Reyes's voice echoed across every channel, calm and strong. "People of Sarath, you are not alone. Today, you were not abandoned. Remember this day, not as the day you were forsaken, but as the day hope returned." And so it was. The story of Sarath spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Whispers grew into shouts. The humans came. The forgotten species, the outcasts of the Council, had stood against the Dominion and triumphed. For the first time in a long age, the galaxy felt something it had lost. Belief. Belief that in the darkest night, light would still come. And that light had a name: humanity.